you're right there. Classic.
Asshole calling. Asshole calling. There's an asshole on the other end of the line. Answer it quick so you can talk to the big asshole.
The next 31 on 31 is not until May. You want to explain to me why I'm hearing your voice in December? Dude, are you kidding me right now? You can't keep using me as this crutch. You can't keep relying on me to come up with all the creative ideas for you. What, it's a slow news week? Nothing to stream about? I don't fucking know, dude. I don't... All right, look, I'm part of the way through this series I'm doing on the 1980s. I'm up to the top 10 of 1982. So if you want, you can tag along on that one. Look, just don't get used to it, okay? Like, we all know why I keep you around. So when I fuck up, I can blame you. You're the bad guy of this situation. You play your fucking role and leave me the hell alone until then. And don't bring that bullshit audio you had in 33 on 31 either. That was a fucking embarrassment. My name's tied to this shit too. Know your place, bitch. And stop sending me nudes.
I don't know what the hell's in there, but it's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
Son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones!
I'm sorry about the door, man. Did that hurt? It looked real painful when you slammed into it.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Phone home.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over!
The needs of the many outweigh
the needs of the few.
or the one.
So a lot of film fans would probably argue for 1982 as being one of the better film years in history. As a matter of fact, Brian Lomax argued that it was probably more worthy than the 1999 series I did, even though that series was adapted from a book. So when I first embraced the idea of doing this video, I looked at what I had seen from 1982 and what had come out in 1982. Needless to say, my list is going to have some things missing from it as far as you're concerned, especially those of you in the horror community. Those of you who know me for a particular type of horror movie, I can only give you one prediction.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
Pain.
Well, anyway, let's just get to the list and I can stop flirting with the idea. Remember, this is simply my list, my opinions. They're not fact. By all means, run amok. Let me know down below what your top 10 of 82 are. Were you alive in 82? Better question. Here it is. Number 10 is Halloween 3. Season of the Witch. I've talked about this film quite a bit. I did a reaction to this film with Gen X Reviews. It feels to me like something Cronenberg would have done. It definitely lives in the Cronenbergian 80s. Anytime you have kids putting masks on and having their heads melt and turn into snakes and bugs, and that was wild. There's more to that movie than that, like Tom Atkins. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, disowned by many Halloween fans. I think it's quite all right, and I wouldn't say this is The Fly. I wouldn't say this is Scanners level Cronenberg stuff here, but again, Cronenberg did not direct this. This is from Tommy Lee Wallace. It's a fun sci-fi little story. Just imagine some corrupt businessman. Can you imagine that? A corrupt businessman? They're not subtle with the messaging about any of it. Although Stonehenge. What the fuck? Number 9. This movie it used to be called First Blood. And then they made multiple Rambos. Whatever. Forget about the title. If you can imagine the supermarket scene from Hurt Locker, this movie is kind of that message just all the way around. It's more of a drama that ends up being an action. I mean, I get the Vietnam PTSD, soldier coming home, all that stuff. The friend he's looking for has passed. Oh, should I say spoilers? I'm probably going to spoil everything on this list. It's surprising where this franchise went. Much like Rocky, Sylvester Stallone somehow got his hands on everything he starred in and then made them, well, mid-80s Stallone movies. But this was quite reserved and a good story, like genuinely. Number 8, E.T., or the extraterrestrial. Terrestrial. I was never really a big fan of this movie. I can appreciate the grand nature that is a Spielberg picture. Yeah, E.T., it's adorable.
There's nothing like that, penis breath!
It seemed like every family in a PG-13 movie from the early 80s had the same setup and lived in like the same neighborhood. E.T., I can only imagine, was down the block from the Poltergeist house. But maybe for the E.T. house, they moved the bodies. Speaking of which, that is my number 7, Poltergeist. I'm more wowed by this movie and more impressed by everything that happens within Poltergeist than I am with E.T. And it's not like this list is exclusively comparing the two things that Steven Spielberg was involved in. But yeah, if I'm going back to watch something again, it's probably going to be Poltergeist and not E.T. There's a bunch of movies in the 80s that just tell us about how terrible we were in the past, and Poltergeist is no different. Long story short, your past will come back to haunt you if you, or karma, or something. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. Number 6. Normally, I rank these lists on movies that I want to go back and watch, but this is like an outlier. It's Sophie's Choice. Meryl Streep, Kevin Kline, but never mind Kevin Kline's existence in this movie. There's this pop culture reference, Sophie's Choice. Oh, I got to make this Sophie's Choice between chicken and steak. And I've always known the reference, Sophie's Choice, picking between two terrible things. And I'll be honest, I never knew what the Sophie's Choice was. So if you go by the title, if you go by just the dumb mentality that I had going into it, two men hang out with Sophie and one she confides in, and you really think you know where things are headed, and it's not like they don't head there. Well, then the second half through the third act happens, and oh, that was Sophie's Choice. Yeah. It's a somewhat predictable movie of sorts in the first half or so, and then you start finding things more and more about Sophie, and it gets darker and darker and darker, and you're just stuck watching it, but you're captivated. There is literally a scene where it's just Meryl Streep telling you the story about what happened to her, and it's her, well lit, good cinematography there, but she's owning it, just monologuing. And do I voluntarily ever want to go back and watch this again? Probably not. Would I? Yes. Is it that good that I've kept certain movies off the top 10 and jumped this into the top 10? Yes. It is an extremely good movie. If anything, it's a clinic in why Meryl Streep is considered such a brilliant actress. And again, her performance really carries that movie. Number 5, Tootsie. Dustin Hoffman as Tootsie. people forget Bill Murray's in that movie as his roommate, and Bill Murray's just I don't know, he must be getting paid scale or some shit. He's not really much of anything. He doesn't steal the show at all. It's Dustin Hoffman just being an actor, going in drag to get work, getting work. I don't know how that would play today, to be honest with you. There's a couple of movies that I watched from '82. We'll get to one in a little bit, but I don't know how Tootsie would play against the modern day social backdrop. If they tried making Tootsie today, just as it is, not trying to modernize it or anything, just making this movie, doing this script today, how would it play? Regardless, you gotta keep your "this was made 40 years ago" mentality. You have to have that hat on, which is this color, by the way. And it's an entertaining story, and Dustin Hoffman kills it. And Jessica Lange, I can't really say I've ever really noticed her in a movie before, but damn it, she as the love interest. Yeah, all right. I mean, Dustin Hoffman's outshining everybody, much like Meryl Streep just anchored Sophie's Choice. The climax of the movie is quite entertaining. Again, this is a drama, a dramedy from the 80s taking place in New York. And I know that because the 80s New York trope is heavy in this movie. In the 80s, apparently, if you were going to make a movie that took place in New York, you needed saxophones. You needed horns. Apparently, New York City was represented by just saxophones. Number 4, Blade Runner. I don't know which version of the movie I'm ranking, to be honest with you. It takes its time. I actually preferred Blade Runner 2049 to Blade Runner, but again, it's number 4 on my list of films in 1982. The things that haven't cracked my top 10, we haven't even... I'm gonna watch Mojo, you guys, and list off a bunch of shit that I just... Nope. But yeah, I've said quite a bit about Blade Runner in the 31 on 31 ranking, so anything else you want to hear on that, go over there. I need the views, the clicks, the comments. By the way, while we're on it, click that like, subscribe, notifications. You can do that now. I'll wait. Number 3, The Joker. Oh, wait, no. It's Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy with Robert De Niro. Talk about a movie that still plays. Like, it is completely relevant. So much so that they just kind of, again, I joked about it, but Joker with Joaquin Phoenix is, to a certain degree, the King of Comedy with a little bit darker elements to it. But everything that this movie covers about fame and stalkers and the price that people will pay to be famous or to be around famous people, not so much fortune. If anything, it's more prevalent now. I've read these thesi on Robert De Niro's character.
Rupert Pupkin, right?
Right.
People like the way certain letters and sounds make, and
Rupert Pupkin.
his name is funny. So much so that This Is Spinal Tap just moved a couple of letters around.
Oh, what's going on here? Hi.
Oh, they're making
Hi, guys. Artie Pufkin, Polymer Records.
SNL has a repeat bit. David S. Pumpkins. There's certain noises that people laugh at, and it's the reason why fuck is such a well-used word. Anyway, there's way more to this movie than his name. I apologize.
Artie Pufkin.
Rupert Pupkin.
But brilliant movie. It's a shame a film like The Joker exists. Not for any Joaquin Phoenix, DC Comics, Batman, any of that stuff. It's a shame because if somebody were to watch The King of Comedy now for the first time, you'd feel like, oh, I've seen this before. It's this. But yeah, King of Comedy kind of did it first. And again, it's still very, very relevant. Scorsese, right up until Wolf of Wall Street, very, very funny. The choices that he makes as far as direction is concerned. King of Comedy is no different. Rupert Pupkin, whether or not he has a sense of humor, he might be a sociopath. He knows when to do certain things.
Yeah.
He may not know why he's doing certain things. It's been done many times since, but you don't have to do something good to be famous. And this movie certainly proves that. Number 2, Das Boot. Much like I referenced earlier with the King of Comedy, I saw a movie called U571 when it first came out. And I remember thinking that was thrilling as all hell, especially watching it on like home media with surround sound and the depth charges and all of that shit. It was so tense, and I thought that was a hell of a movie. And then you watch this movie that it's better. It's 20 years older and it's still better. I feel terrible. I know those of you who are purists, me mentioning U571 in the same breath as Das Boot is well, they're both submarine movies. How many fucking submarine movies are there? But I can read, so I had a good time with it. And again, you don't need to understand their language for this to get just what type of shitty situation it is to be stuck in a tube underwater. It is a much better version of U571. Not the same story, to U571's credit. It's a bit different, but Das Boot is really, really entertaining. And I think the reason it doesn't get that much attention is because it is in another language. A lot of us Americans, myself included up until 5 years ago, I was in film school pissed off that we were watching foreign films. Like, I fucking don't want to read. People know how to make movies without speaking our language. Oddly enough, go figure. And Das Boot is just incredible ride. Great filmmaking, great cinema, great action. Should be in English. There's the miss. Okay, so let's do this Watch Mojo shit. Here's a couple of honorable mentions that were not my number 1. Richard Pryor released Live on the Sunset Strip. It was his first big special after his accident. It was my number 10 for a little bit, and it just got beat out by Halloween 3. But Richard Pryor, if you think you enjoy comedy, it's so saturated now. Watch old school Richard Pryor. I know, you're expecting me to bring up Friday the 13th Part 3. It's not my number 1. You know, against everything else is concerned. It's not that strong, guys. I'm sorry. We're counting all films from 82, not all horror from 82. It is not even my favorite horror movie from 1982. While we're on the topic of horror, Basket Case has quite a following. I'm not one of them. They remade Cat People in 1982. I don't know the source material, so there's that. I've heard that the source material is far better than the 1982 version, which apparently is quite sufficient. Conan the Barbarian, not in my top 10. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I am not a Star Trek guy. If I think Blade Runner is a little slow, holy shit, those early Star Trek movies. Oh, it's like trying to eat a sugar daddy without teeth. Porky's, not on my list. Not on my top 10 at least. Tron must have been fantastic at the time, but it's aged and not that engaging for me. Rocky 3 is not in my top 10. I could say something about Pink Floyd's The Wall, but anybody reviewing that movie ever again has been ruined on YouTube. There were 2 coming-of-age teenage comedies, Last American Virgin and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Not my favorite movie from 1982.
You dick!
So Fast Times isn't my number one. What is? John Carpenter's The Thing, of course. A fucking incredible movie that they all missed out on at that time. So bizarre that that movie was considered a failure. That movie, out of everything that I have on my list that I have seen, things that I have not and maybe will get around to, I will always want to go back and watch The Thing over and over again. It's a hell of a movie, and anything in that movie the special effects are just gorgeous. Body horror is incredible. There is I guess a bit of a whodunit element to it. You don't know who to trust, who not to trust. Snow. How often do you get movies set in snow that are actually really, really, really good? Cue the comment section to list 578 movies that take place in the snow. Actually, they're inside for most of it, so never mind. The Thing is also another movie that I have talked about in other rankings. By all means, run amok and see me talk about that a little bit further. What have I fucked up on? What is your top 10? What would you take out and plug in? I know 90% of you are going to pull Sophie's Choice out. I do have a bit of a ulterior motive co-opting this top 10 list with Cody. As I record this, we're about to finish up in November. This might be released early in December. If, I repeat, if every episode of my 1999 Best Movie Year Ever list reaches 1,000 views, that's 12 episodes, January through December, I will do another year and I will open up voting for a couple of years. And spoiler, 1982 is in heavy consideration. The issue is the third quarter of that series of videos is a little light. It's going to take some work to get from September, October, November, and December to 1,000 in a month, judging by how those videos have performed. So if you'd like to see something like that style done again with a different year where I can get more YouTubers, some that many of you have asked, why didn't you get this person? I planned on it. I'm not done yet. I'm dying to know what Cody's list is. You should too, because I'm certain our lists are different. Maybe not at number one, but everywhere else, I'm almost certain our list is so jarbled. We may have 3 or 4 movies that are in our top 10s each. I'm gonna assume that he has Porky's in his top 10. Maybe Rocky 3, probably Conan. Well, anyway, you go find out, and I'm gonna join you. And do me a favor, comment down below, let me know what you thought, and go check out the 1999 series, see what that's about, and maybe you'd like to see that structure, that format for 1982, or maybe a different year. Special shout out to my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for helping me be able to produce content like this. And until next time, I've been CP. You haven't. So many movies with saxophones. We're not about saxophones in New York. Granted, I wouldn't know, but I don't think the 80s were all about saxes in New York City. It was about crime and spray paint and Times Square being a very different place than it is now. And it wasn't about saxophones.